Abbas's entire strategy here is to sort of step up pressure on Israel to revive the very, very stalled peace talks. I might as well add another very into that. This strategy basically is a statehood strategy. He wants to go full throttle ahead with this drive to seek international recognition, and that would be at a UN General Assembly vote, as perhaps as early as September, to basically recognize the state itself. What he still says officially on the record is that, yeah, he wants to reopen the talks with Israel. Negotiations are still his priority, but he would, if he thinks that having the prospect of his state being recognized by the international community will hasten the revival of those talks, so be it. Now, France has already said it is inclined to recognize a Palestinian state. It's given strong signals that it's inching in that direction, and not just France, but the entire so-called quartet. Who's the quartet? It's the United States, Russia, European Union, United Nations. The basic idea being to move ahead in the hopes that perhaps if they were actually to hold out the prospect of recognizing the Palestinians, some smaller countries, a lot in Latin America have already done so. Over 100 countries have actually recognized the Palestinian state. The major powers were to do so. Israel would be sort of faced with the prospect of a done deed, a fait accompli on the ground, and that might spur the Israelis more to the negotiating table. Like I said, France has already said that they think the Palestinians have all the makings of ready to make a viable state on the ground if they were called upon to do so.
So the aim is to restart this peace process ultimately, but it takes two to tango. What's Israel's response been?
Yeah, well, as I said, this is very much, Israel's been finding itself very much isolated on this subject because a lot of people have been pointing the finger at Israel, blaming it essentially for the breakdown in talks. Now, you could always argue over who's to blame in these things, but one of the reasons that the talks did eventually come to a halt after restarting last September was the resumption of construction building in the West Bank. That was a major issue, and when Israel did decide to re-begin the building of these settlements, these settlement colonies in the West Bank, the Palestinians basically walked away from the talks. They just did not want to have any part of the negotiations so long as this building was going on. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, he's been in a very tough position because he has had to satisfy the demands of a coalition which is seen as being very hardline and brooking sort of no opposition. They're not exactly softies here. For them, construction building is absolutely essential to the Israeli to Israel being Israel, and they don't want to have any talk of stopping this building. But so this is why we're really at a frozen point right now in these negotiations, and this is one of the main reasons why we're hearing so much talk now of this statehood strategy gaining momentum. The Palestinians basically figure they have nothing to lose. They may as well try to go ahead with the recognition because the peace talks seem to be in such a stalemate at this point.
What about the US's role in all of this? Of course, Barack Obama making it a priority to try and rejuvenate, re-energize a stalled peace process, and he's failed to do so.
Yeah. You know, Becky, there's a sense right now that Obama, some people are saying he's actually sort of called a timeout in this peace process. He came in, all trumpets blaring on peace, practically promising or suggesting that there would be a Palestinian state created, or recognized within the next year or so. We all remember the excitement surrounding the initial resumption of these talks after a long, long, long silence last September. And then, as I just said, the build-up, and then the construction building started again, and then all of a sudden it was just frozen on the ground where it started. Obama is under pressure. I mean, he's obviously facing an election campaign last year. Middle East peace talks are always a major part of his ammunition in any election campaign. And if he were to be able to show that he has made real progress on this most intractable, ever elusive peace deals, that would definitely be a giant asset going into these elections. That said, a lot of his advisors, his biggest advisor is his specialist on the Middle East, Dennis Ross, believes that the situation right now in the Middle East, maybe just the right cards aren't aligned. Sometimes you just need to have the right sort of situation in place. And right now, unfortunately, it doesn't seem that lately the stars haven't been aligned the right way.
Because of other events going on in the Middle East?
Well,
to what extent does that have a bearing?
Well, what's interesting about it is the Arab uprisings, you can argue, are actually giving more incentive, spurring this momentum towards perhaps the recognition of a Palestinian state, because Mahmoud Abbas obviously is sitting by, all the Palestinian leadership are sitting by, whether it's in West Bank or in Gaza, which is Hamas run. They're all looking at these Arab uprisings and perhaps thinking what's in it for them and what sort of change could that potentially spur. in whatever happens on that front, there's definitely a sense that the pressure is mounting in the light of these Arab uprisings, that they're changing the equation in the Middle East. You can't just sit there, and that you have to find some sort of solution sooner rather than later. There's talk, the New York Times reported this week that Hillary Clinton and Obama are working on some sort of new outline for a new vision for the Middle East, new North African initiative as well, to sort of get things going again. They've been very much in that rut we've been talking about. But like I said, a lot of uncertainties. Obama doesn't want to be seen failing twice at these peace talks. And unless those stars are aligned that I was talking about, and they think they have a real chance of success, they might not want to forge ahead too quickly with a new initiative and just be seen having to retreat again.
And as for Abbas, his attempts to curry favour, to convert other countries to this statehood strategy continue from here?
Yeah, well, like I said, there's already a whole bunch of countries that have, 10 of them in Latin America, that have already recognized a Palestinian state. Now, like you said, he wants the UN General Assembly to take a full vote in September. And that would be basically recognizing an independent Palestinian state by the UN. That would be a major move, because it would basically be saying, we think the Palestinian state is viable. And then it would basically leave both Israel, which is furiously opposed to this initiative, says that it could totally trash any hopes of successful peace talks, and would also leave, like I said, the United States in a very delicate position, U.S. being Israel's biggest benefactor, one of its biggest allies, yet also wanting to be seen as a fair broker in this peace conflict, so it can't be seen as leaving the Palestinians in the lurch. So U.S.-Israel facing some very tough choices in the months ahead, and meanwhile the Palestinians going full throttle ahead with their statehood strategy.
Many thanks for that fascinating insight. Douglas Herbert, our International Affairs Editor. Now, Ivory Coast's top court official has denied that he's to blame for months of political crisis in the West African country. After meeting with the new president, Alassane Ouattara, the man whose election win he overturned, Yaoundé laid the blame on all Ivorians. He says everyone from the media to the presidential rivals themselves had a part to play. Ndré wants the focus going forward to be on rebuilding the ravaged country.
We met with President Alassane Ouattara, and throughout the talks, there was one essential idea. The Ivory Coast must live. The Ivory Coast must function. The institutions must function. Life has to begin again in the public and private sectors. Things must return to normal. And for that to happen, there has to be security. Like I said, we're all responsible for what happened. The president now, the president who's left, Laurent Gbagbo, the citizens, the media which inflamed the situation, everyone's responsible.
Tensions have flared once more at the disputed border between Thailand and Cambodia using gunfire and artillery shells. Troops clashed near two 900-year-old Hindu temples on Thursday. At least 8 people have been killed in the ongoing skirmish. That figure coming from our correspondent on the ground there. The border has never been fully drawn up between the two countries, partly due to the landmines left over from the Cambodian civil war. Now to a grisly discovery in the garden of a family home in the western French town of Nantes. Police there have opened a murder investigation after the search for a missing family uncovered a severed leg and then 5 bodies. They're believed to be those of a mother and her 4 children. A search has been launched for the husband, 50-year-old Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès. Before the family's disappearance, he told friends he was a secret agent.
It was in the garden of this house, now hidden behind black plastic sheeting, that investigators found the bodies of 5 people, probably belonging to the mother of the house and her 4 children. The bodies were found wrapped in curtains and buried in the garden. Since the start of April, there'd been no sign of life of the father Xavier, Agnès the mother, and their 4 children aged 13 to 21. What began as a missing persons report has become a murder investigation.
They were held against their will and assassinated, and so unfortunately this has become a criminal case.
According to the first few pieces of information, it looks as though the murders were premeditated. A letter was sent to the children's school asking for them to be removed as the family were moving to Australia. There were no records of any recent bank transfers or phone calls, and neighbours reported seeing the father looking particularly anxious.
What was intriguing was that he didn't stop going back and forth to fill up his trunk with big shopping bags. He was wearing Bermuda shorts, a polo shirt and deck shoes. And I asked my friend, what on earth is our neighbour doing?
Those who knew the family are trying to get to grips with what's happened.
The family were so nice. The parents were good to everyone. That's why I don't understand it. It's a mystery to me.
The police are looking for this 4x4 car and have made an appeal for witnesses.
You're watching live from Paris here on France 24. A reminder now of our top stories this Friday.